What is the funniest thing you've ever seen in real life? When I was 9, my brother was 10. We had gone out for the day with my mom, one of her friends, and her friend's 2 sons who were 12 and 13. At this park, all 4 of us boys went in to use the bathroom. There were 4 urinals, so we lined up and started peeing. One of the other guys lost control or something and peed on my brother's foot. He was wearing flip-flops, so all of a sudden he felt warm liquid on his foot. He jumped back screaming, "Dave, you're peeing on me." As he tried to move out of the line of fire, he slipped and fell. As he hit the floor, he peed all over himself. I'll never forget the visual of my poor brother, pants down, flopping around on the wet bathroom floor, peeing on himself while our friend peed on his foot. He stunk so bad after that my mom made him take all his clothes off and wash up in the sink. Then he wrapped a towel around himself and wore only a towel for the next couple of hours until we got home. I gave my niece 3 her very first magic baby bottle to feed her baby doll. You know, the kind where the milk disappears when you turn the bottle upside down. I handed it to her, and Grandma and I looked on smiling as she tucked her baby into its crib and stuck the bottle against its lips to feed it. And then she dropped the bottle, wide-eyed, and gasped, then screamed at the top of her lungs and ran crying to her grandmother, sputtering that the baby was alive. It took a long time to calm her while we tried our very hardest and failed miserably not to laugh while we showed her that it was just a fun toy. Nothing we could do could stop the terror though. She won't play with the magic bottle or her baby doll anymore. One of the funniest things I've ever seen in person was a little kid run full speed into the trash can attached to a bus's cart. Kid was running full speed, looking back over his shoulder and screaming while carrying a double handful of mints he had snatched from the bowl by the register. He hit that trash can with a resounding thunk and 20-something mints scattered everywhere like he was some kinda snot-nosed piata. Fell flat on his ass and started crying, at which point his parents finally took notice. I was laughing so hard I was crying too. Too long didn't read. Kid did a Sonic impression, but with mints instead of rings. My first job was at an arcade in a water park. In front of the arcade was a walkway dotted with tiny puddles, and on a very slow day, my co-worker and I were staring out into the abyss and chatting mindlessly when we spotted 2 other employees walking past the arcade. One of the employees jumped into one of the tiny puddles, trying to splash the other employee. Suddenly, the guy's feet were above his shoulders and he crashed to the earth, making a sound like a horse carcass thrown from a plane. My knees gave out, and I almost passed out from laughing so goddamn hard. My dad and his brothers are known for grabbing food drink and taking a bite sip before knowing what the comestible is or to whom it belongs. Imagine 3 grown men who are as food motivated as puppies. I've seen the oldest uncle take a giant spoonful of béarnaise sauce at a fancy wedding thinking it was soup, and my other uncle put caviar on his slice of cake at the same event thinking it was jam. The older uncle once raided our freezer and served himself a bowl of rendered, frozen turkey fat on the day after Thanksgiving thinking it was ice cream. My personal favorite was the time my mom was getting their waterbed treated. It was the early 90s and my dad took a gulp of the sample cup that was on the nightstand and had to get his stomach pumped. My mom was seriously pissed off at me one time while we were in the car. She was yelling and questioning me about whatever I did. It was midday, so the sun was strong, so she put on sunglasses. She asked me a question and looked over at me, and when I looked back at her all I could do was laugh. Her sunglasses were missing a lens, so she had one eye covered and the other out. My mom was furious, and I couldn't manage to stop laughing to tell her why I was laughing. Until I did, and when she checked she started laughing too. It completely changed the mood, which was very serious before. One of the funniest things I've ever dealt with. Me and my brother were once sat up really late drinking in the street in an Italian town when someone nearby rolled their scooter rickshaw thingy. He flipped his bike back over, dusted himself off, and in the most stereotypical way said "Mamma Mia," and set off, as if it were nothing. A wild turkey falling out of a tree. It sort of did this gobble scream as it fell, and then bounced when it hit the ground. Was at church with my family. Parents made me and my sister go, and there was a point when we were all meant to be silently praying. Well, at that time a mother walked in with her daughter, maybe 3 years old, and she was guiding her down the aisle with a hand on her head. They came to the pew in front of me, and the mom led her daughter's head right into the side of the bench. It made a loud thump, and the girl had such a confused face for a solid 10 seconds. She didn't cry, and I don't even think the mom noticed. Me and my sister noticed though. I had to bite my tongue hard to stop laughing, and even still I couldn't get the little girl's confused face out of my head. Took all of my self-control not to bust out laughing multiple times during that mass. I saw my coworker's dog run into a sliding glass door while holding his food bowl. Standing at a back street at the moment with 3 or 4 friends in the middle of the night in a student city. It's dead silent and this kid comes bounding around the corner. Myself and my friends all watch him as he runs flat into a bollard, flips into the air and lands face first on a cobbled street. He's laying on the floor, glass is embedded in his face and blood everywhere. We must have stood watching in shocked silence for about 15 seconds before his friend casually walks around the corner, sees him and says, "Phil, what the duck are you doing?" Years ago I went to see a screening of the film Beaches on our college campus. When lights went down, everyone was horrified to see a magnified cockroach laying on its back, projected on the screen at the start of the film. What made it hilarious was roaches wiggling its legs to the tune of Under the Boardwalk Bette Midler singing, while the film's opening credits rolled in the background. A long time ago in rural southern Denmark, I was visiting my grandmother. She had many stray cats around her property, and she cared for them all. Even some hedgehogs she had made a nesting place for with some hay. I was just a child at the time. When we arrived at her place she got out and took the groceries inside. I stayed outside for a spell to get some fresh country air and stretch my legs. Then I heard some rustling in a nearby hedge, only to see a black cat that then proceeded to have the loudest and wettest diarrhea I have ever heard or seen a cat have. Not only was this feline's bowels exploding in front of me, but it maintained direct eye contact with me for the entirety of the movement. My grandmother rushed out because she thought I was crying. Too long didn't read cat had diarrhea while staring into my soul. I was sitting in the balcony at an end of the year ballet show for kids, where they show off to their parents everything they learned. Some of it was pretty good as the ages ranged from around 5 to 16. For the real young kids, they had this one portion where all they did was one by one enter stage from either backstage right or backstage left and skip to front stage right or front stage left diagonally with these big stupid grins on their faces. This would only be mildly funny, but this went on for probably 50 children. After about 20 of these, I couldn't hold my laughter back, at which point all the other adults with children sitting near me caught my laughter and started laughing too, which only made my laughter worse. It was amazing. As kids we were collecting wood for a bonfire. Some workmen had left a large sheet of plywood just lying in the street, so obviously we decided to steal it. I picked up one end. Jimmy picked up the other. I stepped backwards. Jimmy stepped forwards. Jimmy's foot went straight down the manhole the ply was covering. With his other foot he pretty much kicked himself in the head on the way down. For a split second we were really worried about him. Then we realized that he wasn't badly hurt, and we laughed our asses off. I was having my 9th birthday party. My sister lit the candle, it set my afro on fire. I was in Walmart near the toy section. This little kid comes running from the next aisle and runs face first into the wall. Kid is on the ground bawling. His dad calmly walks over to him, picks him up, and says, "Buddy, you can't just go running into walls like that." It was like it was an everyday occurrence. What made it even better was he ran into the wall right next to the bicycle helmets. We talked about this, buddy. I went to a nightclub one day during my university days. Was pretty hammered and ordered some drinks. When I headed to the dance floor a lady fell down from the balcony above and she had a glass of drink in her hand and did not spill a single drop. balcony was like 4 meters high. I'm still amazed to this day that she just walked away from that like nothing happened. If I would walked a couple more steps she would have landed on me. My grandpa is very impulsive. He will just blurt out whatever comes to his mind. His son, a fairly rich uncle of mine, took the whole family out to dinner. My rich uncle saw this elderly couple having a quiet little anniversary dinner. So my uncle secretly took their ticket and paid for it as an unexpected surprise. My grandpa saw him pay for the ticket, and on the way out, he walks over to the elderly couple and said, "You better enjoy that dinner. My son paid for it." Everyone in the family did a unified facepalm. There was another time we went out to eat, and the restaurant had run out of baked potatoes. My grandpa got up and left about 10 minutes later. He comes back with 3 Wendy's bags full of baked potatoes and gives them to the waitress so they could serve them to us with his steak. The first time he met my husband, my grandpa told him that if he wants to get into my panties, he needs to give me the fruit from the moonshine because it will make those panties fall right off. My husband still laughs about it, and I don't trust him when he tries to give me fruit. So too long didn't read my grandfather's impulsiveness. In high school we had an anthropology elective, and in the classroom there was this one big fellow who sat in the back, barely participating. The teacher brought in an assortment of ancient stone tools. Holding up the largest one, he asked, "What do you think this was used for?" Guy in the back muttered, "Bud scraper." Teacher ignored him and held up a smaller version of the first tool. "Class, what do you think this one is called?" Same student replied, "Baby bud scraper." A kid had just dragged his mama's last Nerf and she swung around, hand raised in the air with the promise of giving him a good old slap on the tushy. Kid saw what was up, tucked his ass in and ran away, thrusting his pelvis forward every time her hand swatted towards his backside. Seeing the frustration on the mother's face every time she missed and the terror on the child's face made me laugh until tears were rolling down my cheeks. Note the mother wasn't being abusive or out of control. My brother's teenage friend farted in church during a quiet period of the service. It started out low, then rose to a higher squealing pitch, and echoed around the rafters. They laughed so hard that they had to get up and leave. My mom made them apologize to the priest afterwards. My cousin and I, both 13, convinced his 10-year-old brother that there was an alligator eating all the fish in a shallow pond near my house. If he could kill the alligator by beating it over the head with a golf club, he'd be a hero in the family. Only we could see the gator's movements from the top of a hill, and we gave him directions of where he had to swing into the water to get it. After like 7 swings and falling into the pond, scaring himself shitless, the jig was up. That prank still makes us laugh at family reunions 25 years later. A loud argument between 2 grown men culminating in one of them yelling, "You're a douchebag." That's exactly why they call you Larry the douchebag. My boyfriend and I went to Taco Bell one day. It was the first time he went through that specific Taco Bell drive-thru because he had only just started driving and simultaneously stopped keeping kosher. This drive-thru had one window after the talking menu where you order, you drive up, you pay, you wait there, they give you your food, you leave. Some places have separate windows, one where you pay and one where you get your food. My boyfriend comes to this window and is perplexed by the fact that there is only one window. He asks if maybe the second window is around the corner of the Taco Bell building. I tell him, "No honey, just stay here. If you turn the corner, you are going to find the front of the building where the front doors are," he says. I'm pulling around to find the second window. As he leaves, the poor girl handing him his food watches him drive away. He finds the front of the building. I laugh at him. He goes in and asks what to do. They tell him to go back in the drive-thru. He pulls back through the drive-thru. We explain at the talking menu and pull forward to the lonesome window. Same girl looks up and goes, "Oh, it's you." Then her manager, a large sassy black woman, comes up behind this girl and starts tearing my boyfriend a new one. "You had me looking in the drive-thru for you. I went outside looking for you. I looked in the dining area for you. And now here you are back in my drive-thru." I got my eyes on you. My boyfriend hung his head in shame. And I cackled into my quesarito while he sat in his mistake. This was 2 years ago, and he will never live it down. When I was maybe 7 or 8, my older brother was 10ish. We liked to ride bikes with the older kids. But sometimes they would get mad and ride by and kick us and make us go away. One time, they kept kicking my brother, so he hopped off his bike and started screaming at each kid as they rode past him. As he opened his mouth to scream, one of the kids riding by spit a loogie looked like a gumball in my memory, and it went straight in my brother's mouth and apparently hit his uvula. It went from a scream to a projectile vomit instantly. Agruo, violent, deep, baritone, wonderful. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe,